So just first and foremost, welcome on behalf of me, Nathan Lloyd, Gary Linnison, who is not here, and Azamina Matsani, who is not here. They are the other co-organizers. So big thank you for joining us today, submitting, and joining this community. We have a very stacked program today, so I am going to be as harsh as I can with the talk. So, you're going to get pointing to, cut when need to be. So we're going to have first 5 minutes opening remarks. I'm not going to talk that long, but we're going to move quickly into voluntary introductions from participants. So this is very different from all the workshops I've been to this week. I'm essentially going to pass a microphone around. You don't have to answer all 3 questions. I mean, you don't have to answer at all. It's voluntary, but please introduce yourself, who you are, where you've come from, and maybe why you're here. I will accept the answers that this is the best workshop on the program. But I didn't have, any bribes to bring about that answer. So after that, we'll have a keynote, and we'll have 2 talks. We'll then move into a break, followed by another 2 talks, and then those 4 talks will have a joint panel and Q&A. We'll wrap up with a final talk, and that will flow into the working groups. Okay. So, let's begin with you, because you're at the front.
What should I say?
Who are you?
Oh, I'm Ad. Do you hear me?
We can see your screen now, Zara.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Do you hear me?
Can we turn the audio?
Do you hear me? Yeah.
Quiet. Could you just be closer to the microphone, if that's okay?
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Zahra. I'm a researcher at Ontario Tech University, and my research focused on explainable AI and trust, especially uncertainty quantification and consistency in large language models in marketing and clinical domain. Today, I wanted to talk about semiotic legibility. Actually, in this work, we ask a simple question. How we keep human AI messaging clear and accountable. Our approach is LLM first, yet model agnostic, pairing a 4-part checklist: voice and tone, claim, structure, and citation, audience, uptake, and feedback-driven learning, with 2-term repair rules to correct errors quickly. Imagine it's Monday morning in your organization. A few colleagues and AI assistant are talking about a remote work alliance, messaging go back and forth, and a small problems creep in. The tone suddenly gets stiff, a claim shows up without a source, turn taking gets unclear, and trust drops. We look at this with a practical lens from philosophy of technology. From post-phenomenology, we learn that technology isn't just a tool. It's shape how we perceive and act. So voice and sign and the audience uptake really matter. From actor network theory, we take the idea of in trace. Every claim should leave a trail. Sentences leave citations and a rule tag. And from second order cybernetic, we use feedback on feedback, reflective loop that adjusts itself after each message. And from Discord ethics, we keep repair norm, guide, and accountable, clear, and concerned, not worry and not vague. And with this in mind, we use a simple four-layer frameworks that runs inside the conversation. At each layer, we consider two complementary perspectives, the technical implementation and the mathematical formulation. In layer one, voice and identity, we track who is speaking and in what tone. A lightweight style guide sets loud or block words, source disclosure, AI or human, and politeness boundaries. Every message gets a speaker tag and target tone. If drift, we flag for a repair. In layer two, we have codes and forms. We have one role. In this role, it's give each claim only the evidence it needs, no less, no more. We attach sentences level citations and when relevant, a rule tag so it's auditable later. Analogics are on demand to help, not distract, just help. And visual are checked for authenticity. In layer 3, audience uptake, we compute a quick ambiguity, a score, risk, or misunderstanding, and style fit. A score does tone and the credibility, emotion, logic balance with this audience. If a threshold is crossed, a yellow light turn on. In layer four, we have meta feedback. We run a fast two-step repairs. Turn one, a very short clarification or a compact analogy if the audience asks. And turn two, a conscious answer which sentences level evidence, plus a rule tag if needed. And we also like issues too few, many, and wrong citation, tones, sleeps, poor turning take, so we do better next time. And on the top of this, on the top of these four layers, we have a gentle supervisor reflective adoption loop. After each message, it checked four things. At first, is ambiguity going down? Is audience fit distance going down? Are citation still high quality? And are we repairing in a two-turn repair invariant? If we drift outside the safe band, and reflective adoption loops knocks us to act, clarify to the tone, trim evidence back to only what's needed, enforce the two-step repair, or likely tweak the prompt. And in practice, we run a small A/B test to pick the best fix. We try 3 layers, use an analogy only when the audience asks, give a short why or why not with a teeny counterfactual, and tweak the prompt to keep the model on style. We choose the option that moves the reflective adoption loops, deals to lightweight, lower ambiguity, lower audience fit distance, higher citations quality. So the conversation finished at most 2 turns: simple, fair, auditable. And we turn legibility from the vague idea into a measure, actually the control signal that stress tones, evidence, and turns taking with a 2-turn repair standards for fast, low effort resolution. Technically, a reflective adoption loop driven by 2DL. ambiguity and audience fit distance together with min or max per sentences citations keeps message inside the safe band and fully auditable. This is an example come from a separate human study in another paper. On that paper, we measured the legibility layers instead the philosophical framework, artificial collective intentionality. In this quick snapshot, on the right of the blue line is ambiguity, and the orange line is the orange line is authenticity. In this before ambiguity weigh to 0.92 and fit distance to 0.8, after they drop to 0.65 and 0.14. In the KPI box, citation perceive or recall improved from 8.6 to 9.5. What driven this? Actually, a small controller is about three things: reflective adoption loops, and style guide and sign. If a metric leaves the band, we run a two-step repair: clarify evidence answer with sentences level citations and a ruled tag. And in this many case, an employee ask about a remote work allowance. An answer at first time, yes. Are you full-time or part-time? And in turn two, evidence answer, yes, you quality seek loads 3.2a and 3.2, it's rule. And this is clean, fast, and auditable. Why this matter for Alife? We think legibility stops being a slogan and becomes a testable signal for multi-agent coordination and for studying emergence or repair with transmissibility and reproducibility built in. And why this matter for organizations? You get small, fast, auditable loops. Each claim carries only the evidence it needs. If needs, conversations close in at most 2 turns. A style guide keeps tone consistent, and a dashboard shows a steady improve, lower review cost, higher trust. And in the end, picture that the same Monday morning exchange, instead of getting lost in long, fuzzy message, it ends with one short question and one clear evidence answer. We want to implement this framework, a clear 4 layers design with reflective loops, a simple style guide, and a light dashboard, so busy conversations reach clear, reliable, and decisions. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Zara. Do we have any burning questions, clarification questions whilst the next speaker sets up?
Lack of one. So do you think you, Zara, sharing? And you can hear online? There's nobody online anyway, is there? Yeah. And is that big enough for everyone? Can you see it at the back? I mean, right? How do you make it bigger? Well, I've heard of that one, but... Oh, look at that. Didn't work this morning. What?
If you hover over the profile photos, you'll get like a little menu there. Or like the dash on the bottom. And then just press that.
Oh, okay, right, thank you. Well, I'm on time still. But, right. So I'm going to talk about open-ended institutional adaptation, and in particular a bit of human-computer interaction. And the open-ended bit was something that I took from the conference last year, and the institutional adaptation is the thing that we've been doing for some time. And obviously there are links with what Ada was talking so phenomenally nicely about. But the key thing that perhaps is going on here is the human and the AI, or the human and the Alife co-working. So this is some joint work with a bunch of colleagues. It's inversely correlated with vagueness here. So the story is actually going to go from me through to Stefan, but it actually gets vaguer the more we go that way. Yeah? So depending on the questions that we have, will determine how well that we're going to answer them. Yeah. So, thank you. Right. So the argument I'm going to make is that we've been working on institutional specification. So Ada pops up the Ostrom principles, and we've been building these multi-agent institutions based on these principles. And so we have sets of rules. These rules have parameters, and we want to change those parameters in order to configure the institution for the environment that it's working in. So we have done some things for cyber-physical systems. So these are norm-governed multi-agent systems I'll talk about. And these were sort of closed. We want to try and open it up. So we were looking at socio-technical systems and using something called socially guided reasoning and learning for trying to sort of relate humans and AI in the co-production of what we call social arrangements, and these are basically those rules that you use in your institution. And it turns out what's crucial for that is the interaction between the human and the AI, or the human and the Alife. This comes with a certain number of challenges, which I will try to talk about. And we're going to come to two conclusions, one which Stefan says is debatable, and another one we're going to throw in. We're going to try and see what you guys make of the idea of AI integrationism. So this is our notion of a closed institution. So this is our work primarily led by Alexander Artikis, who came up with this idea of dynamic norm-governed systems. And the key thing that we were trying to get at in these systems was the notion of institutionalized power. And so this is the idea that you actually have two sorts of facts in your system. You have these physical facts, which are true by the nature of physical reality. And we have these conventional facts, which are true by virtue of the fact that we just agree that this is true, okay? And you can, if you've got the power, the physical power, you can move things around to change the world, and there are constraints on that. So, we may each have the physical strength to move a chair out of the room, but apparently we're not allowed to, okay? This is, And then the same kind of thing applies to institutionalized power, the ability to actually perform certain acts which change the state of the conventional world. Okay? So these specifications were concerned with defining this institutional power, and also various permissions and obligations whether you're allowed to create these institutional facts or not, or change the physical world. And then each of these rules then become associated with a role, and an agent can occupy a certain role and can then actually declare things through speech-act theory, so that a particular action X counts as, in a certain context C, as establishing a state of affairs Y. Okay? And then you can change those degrees of freedom. Yeah? And that effectively defines this specification space. Yeah? And so here's an example with 3 degrees of freedom. And these are all the possible points that you can have. And here we are in the middle of this thing. And we can even define constraints on how you can move about this space, that you might only be allowed to move within certain limits. And there might be other rules which allow you to expand or contract this box here as I've drawn it, to include other sort of points here. But essentially this means that we could map out this thing as a big set of rules where we've got, each rule's got a certain number of parameters, and each parameter has a certain number of values, but we know what these are. So it might be a big space, but we can map the whole thing out. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that when we want to negotiate with these social arrangements and changing them, we want to be able to actually change them in some way. Yeah? So when we go to from a self-organizing system to a self-governing system, self-governing system is going to regulate itself through these social arrangements, and you want to change them. And those changes require some kind of consensus, so you're going to go into a form of social deliberation. The problem is that you've got a trade-off here. Yeah? The ideal is consensus, but it's time-consuming and you might not get there. So this is why you appeal to a plurality vote, you go to majority voting, and that can be more efficient, but it risks this problem of majoritarian tyranny when one's group keeps on, because they're a dominant in number, they keep on satisfying their own interests and neglecting the risks of the benefits of the minority. Yeah? So one alternative to doing that is to use social contracts. Yeah? And so here what we did was we had basically a matrix representation of the degrees of freedom. Yeah? And the argument was, if you're going to this contract, you can actually basically get the same result by using the contract as you would have got if you had argued about it and then taken a vote or whatever. Yeah? And so this will increase the computational efficiency, but it'll decrease the communications. And now we've got a kind of an advantage, yeah? Is that if we want to actually change this now, all you have to do is change the values that we put in the matrix, and we're good. Yeah? But that's not the thing. What happens when we want to add a row or a column to the matrix? Well, we have to change the nature of the social contracts. That takes up some deeper problems as well. Yeah? So you get a number of issues now, and sort of Ada has really outlined some of these issues very, very nicely. But I mean, to go through some of these things, much better than I have. But so there's issues of citizenship. Yeah. So when you get a boundary problem that the people who are allowed to make these decisions, at some point, some group has arbitrarily declared them to be citizens and then excludes others or includes some depending on certain criteria and conditions. There's the notion of polity, because you've got your set of rules and you might encounter another group which has got its own institution, and you've actually got to define your interactions with respect to this other group. And then, of course, there's the environment, and this environment can be changing all the time. And you've got to make sure that the set of rules that you have is congruent with that environment. Yeah? And the ultimate problem here is, and I'll read it out, yeah, is that our institution is a set of rules defined by these parameters with their degrees of freedom, has ended up optimizing and counter-optimizing itself, either against itself within the institution, with a polity against other institutions, and also possibly the environment. And now the potential for adaptation stagnates. In other words, the institution has played all the possible games against itself, other institutions, or the environment, and there's no more room for self-improvement within this closed specification space. And there are no more games that you can discover. So we need this notion of open-endedness. So in this case, we went towards socially guided machine reasoning and learning, and this was one of the contribution in Asamina's thesis. Yeah? And what she did is she built this system which had an interactive interface to a large language model and a multi-agent system. And what she was trying to do was appeal to particular values of the community. So one was empowerment, which had several dimensions, and another one was the health of a community. And so what she could do is that she could either could look at the social arrangements and basically say, either by the human user, say, I want to try this out, or make a suggestion or a prompt to the LLM and saying, look, it looks like we're low on some of these metrics. Is there a social arrangement that you could recommend that would enable you to bring some change? Yeah? And then if it comes back with a new rule or something like that, you plug it in to the multi-agent system, and then you animate it to see how it would behave, what your community would look like, and then your spider plots would change. And this is what we see here, is that there's an ongoing, I'm sorry you can't read, you have to trust me. Yeah. That there's this ongoing dialogue, and we see things changing as we propose new rules, animate it in the multi-agent system, and then keep on that. And you can keep on doing that, and then at some point you get through a certain sequence of rules, and you can just bootstrap it and go back to where you started and do it again and see if different sequences of rules have a different effect. Yeah? And the thing is, what we were really trying to do here was combine the imagination and the insight of the human with the LLM's ability to synthesize disparate knowledge in order to do some kind of innovation. This is what you do when you have the polity, for example. I mean, you're one institution and you see another institution and think, oh, wow, we hadn't thought of doing that this way. And this is how you can get self-improvement by, call it exchanging best practice. Yeah? This is how you get innovation. So this interaction here really calls for us to have to rethink exactly what is going on in terms of the interaction between the human and the computer, because it's not just the output that we're concerned with now, it's the frame in which this is being put, the way you understand it. And it's even not just the frame, it is the plane at which you are actually observing these things. There's definitely a problem that you might get in this kind of system with selective and exclusive presentation. Yeah? And we could just end up ourselves in a situation, just like the early systems where you sort of feel moded in by a certain level of interaction. This is one of the things that we fear with algorithmic governance. It's the machine says, these are the rules, yeah, and all you're allowed to do as the user is to choose between them. And we want to avoid that. You can imagine some kind of semantic moding in as well, when you don't really know what these things are doing, and you end up just being like some kind of cargo cult. This is what we're told to do, and if we keep on doing this, it'll be fine. Yeah? So we need to open up the presentation of output as well in order to encourage reflection, but also the particular human qualities of imagination, intuition, and indeed inspiration as well. And we need to sort of really focus on these narratives, because these are the things that give meaning to the whole thing. Yeah. So we wanted to make sure that human power and agency is maintained in the participation of constructing these social arrangements. Yeah. And there's some kind of embodiment that's what is going on in terms of the coordination and the co-creation of these social arrangements through this dialogue that's going on. And that leaves us to a number of challenges. I'll leave the auto-formalization, but also informalization. It's not just the translating into formal language, but translating back into natural one. This is what, in part, Zara's semiotics is trying to get at. Yeah? But there's also the power dynamics at the moment. Yeah? I mean, for at the least, generally speaking, we mostly understand institutions. I keep on having to explain this every year to the undergraduates go through, but we do understand institutionalized power and how it is that we can create these institutional facts with words. And at the moment, I think for the most part we understand it, but our machines do not. But I can foresee a future where the machine understands what the institutionalized power, the meaning of their words is, and the humans do not. Yeah. And this worries me. As I said, we need to have the meaning and the purpose of process. I want to know not just what the process is, but why it is that we have it. What is the value that is being produced? And processes have a life cycle of their own. They are born, they're initiated, we start using them. Then they sort of like get into this sort of like habit or ritual or something, and then they start ossifying. It especially happens when the link between the signifier and the signified is broken. We no longer know why we do this, we just know that we do this. You know. And if you doubt me, Christmas, right? Yeah. Okay, I've got to go out and buy this stuff. Yeah, but the link with the actual reason that we do it, long gone. Indeed, you know, what we're actually doing is feeding the capitalist machine. Yeah? And you know, this is no better than the cargo cults in the Pacific Ocean after the Second World War. And these are ideas of Stefan, who's got a degree in philosophy as well. You know. So he talks about the social economies of these human AI ecosystems. Yeah? And he starts talking about drama theory, which okay. Yeah. But the issue here, yeah, so we all know what it means. I'll stop here. Yeah, in a moment. You know, that when you're playing chess, even if you're an elephant playing chess, yeah, if you knock over your king, this means that you resign. Yeah. This is, you know, a speech act X counts as Y in context C. Yeah. But what happens when you flip over the entire board? Yeah. Yeah. And when you play the game Scrabble. Yeah. I could tell that my mum was actually quite fond of me when she threw the Scrabble board at me. So that's right. Okay. But yeah, anyway. But did I win? No. So yeah. Anyway, so the debatable conclusion. Can I just finish this? Yeah, no, 1 minute. Yeah, okay. You know, why do we need open-ended institutionalization? Why not just use our existing models? But our argument here actually is because if the model that your existing model, actually faithfully represented what is really going on, then it would have been open in the first place. You know, it needs to be open for any of this to make sense. Yeah. But then I'd like to think that, you know, what we're looking at here, this behind here is this idea of AI integrationism, yeah, which is we're getting towards a new theory of innovation, which is actually emphasizing the civics. This came out in the panel. Audrey was talking about civic care, but we're talking here about civic education, civic participation, and specifically civic dignity when we're moving around in these things, which you know, the constraints that we're putting on both minimal and maximal rights to self-organize, yeah, are about maintaining dignity here. And so what this will do is to enhance rules-based organization models with this form of institutional application based on an imagined partnership in co-creation and co-production between people and Alife about these social arrangements, and essentially rejects the technical transformation of humans into post-humans, so you know, some greater human, but also rejects the technological reduction of humans, as Norbert Wiener said, just elements of the machine. Brilliant, thank you very much.
So let me start. I'm Ty myself. All right. Okay, thank you very much for having me in this session. This is my first time coming to this workshop. So I'm Hiroki, and this talk is very much like just a typical social science type of experiment, but in the fundamental level, this is entirely Alife. I'm going to explain that why. So we are studying the social networks and people's functional diversity and its effects on the performance of a collective ideation process. Okay. So basically, this is the work already published earlier this year, so please read on site. That was published in NPJ Complexity earlier this year in January, and we also wrote about a blog of what this research is about. So this is a link to the blog as well. This was the project, a very long-term project starting in 2017. And there was a pandemic in the middle, and everything was going hiatus, and we finally get all the analysis and publication earlier this year. So we are so proud. This is now in conclusion. Yeah, the main question we are addressing in this research is how the diversity, now the keyword, I want to say diversity. That's the why I came here. Yeah, it's so difficult to say that in the United States right now. Yeah, the background, the people, okay, and how to compose those people in what kind of shape in order to achieve certain performance of the collective. And we did it experimentally. So here's a very quick overview of what kind of experiment we did. It's entirely online. We set up some very simple Twitter X-like timeline-based coordination mechanism. So we set up the server in our lab. Everything was written in Python or Flask, nothing fancy. And then participants are going to be receiving the anonymized login name password. So they are logging into this handmade server. And then they receive the instruction, what kind of stuff they're going to do. And then they just spend 15 minutes each day posting ideas, commenting, liking, etc. for 2 weeks. Essentially, it's going to be 10 working days. And then once the 2-week session is over, they're going to submit which idea they thought was going to be the best. Okay. So here are the 2 tasks we did. One is to create a laptop slogan. So here's a mediocre laptop you need to sell, right? Nothing to talk about. But can you come up with a really clever sales catchphrase to sell this laptop? This is a very highly collaborative task. People liked on other people's ideas, and they're going to revise. So it was indeed a collaborative process. The second one is done just to see if the communication actually has any effect on the experiment. Second one is story writing. Just write a fiction, like a 280 characters fictional story. This one also has some kind of commenting, liking, but very few people are going to build on top of someone else's writing. Each day, each person is going to come up with a new fictional story. So this is the number 1 is high collaboration. Number 2 is a low collaboration. Here's the experimental procedure. I already mentioned that I'm going to skip basically 2 weeks. Everybody going to log into the server 15 minutes a day. And then finally, they're going to submit the final results they liked most. And how to quantify the people's background diversity, where we start using the language model. Remember that back in 2017, there was no ChatGPT. So we started using the typical semantic embedding system like a Dr. Vec. Nowadays, everybody uses large language models, but we started this experiment many, many years prior. So at the beginning of each session, each person was required to write a substantial amount of text about themselves. It's entirely open-ended essay. We just asked them, please tell us about yourself, your academic major, your professional goals, what kind of stuff you do, hobby, blah, blah, blah. They wrote whatever they wanted to express about themselves. And we put that into the Dr. Vec model to map into the 400-dimensional semantic space. And we measure distances between each person, how different they are, how similar they are. And that's one control variable we changed in terms of the distances between students' background vector. And also, each idea posted daily, they are much shorter. It's not even an essay, just 1 sentence, 2 sentences. They are also mapped to the 100-dimensional semantic space so that we can analyze how diverse the ideas are generated. Okay. And the 2 network configurations we tested are these 2. Spatial networks, this is very ring-shaped networks with only the local connections between people, versus the fully connected network, everybody can see each other's ideas. One thing I forgot to mention, that you will see ideas coming from your social neighbors only. So the first setting is very, very boring to people, because if you log in, you see only a few ideas coming from your logical neighbors. And many participants complain that, Professor, there's really nobody here. This experiment sucks. And why are you even trying to do this? That kind of complaints always came from the participants of the first setting, versus the participants in the second setting they really liked, because the timeline is very busy, lots of things going on. Okay. Do you have any idea which one actually performed better? 1 or 2? 1. Oh, yes. Ada has an insight. Turns out 1 actually performed much better in many respects, even though the satisfaction of the participants are much higher for the second one. So this is kind of an interesting puzzle we discovered. Okay, so here are some of the results. We are comparing 2 different network topologies. Left is the cluster spatial ones. Right is the fully connected ones. The first chart is about number of posts. How many ideas are generated by the group? This was pretty much the same. So the activity-wise, it's not really causing any difference. But if you look at the average distance between generated ideas, statistically significantly more diverse ideas are coming from the spatial one, right? If you want to have idea diversity, better disconnect people. This makes sense to this crowd, probably. But if I present this to the other, like a social scientists, they are puzzled. Why? Right? Innovation should be coming from the connections. That's a misconception, which is easy to communicate to this community, right? And this is the utility score evaluated by the third-party experts, the marketing, PhD students, and I think creative writing experts for the slogan task and the fictional writing tasks. Interestingly enough, the clustered network tend to produce better ideas, even though this is a little bit statistically weaker because we have only a small number of samples. But given the small number of samples, the p-value getting 0.057. This is pretty significant in my opinion. So disconnecting people and making connection only local actually produces more diverse ideas and possibly better ideas. And this was somewhat predicted by some simulation models that we published earlier, like 7 years ago, but anyway. And this is something I mentioned also. This is the survey responses. After the experiment is done, people said, what was the overall experience of this, the experiments? So what do you think about the overall quality of final designs? And how much do you think you contributed to the session? And finally, how much you learned about your anonymized peers? And clearly, the fully connected network people are much more confident. By the way, this is wrong, right? Objectively, they were lower, but subjectively, they feel more confident. We did great, because there are lots of discussion happening. So this is kind of the illusion we might be all in, right? Connections are getting promoted by social media, all kind of media. We get more and more exposure to the more information. We feel more confident. We are doing better than before. The reality might be the opposite. Yeah. So, and finally, we also tested 3 different conditions for the spatially clustered network. One is a homophilic network or associative background network, meaning that people are connected to the other people who are similar to themselves. The other extreme is that we maximize the distance across the edge. So if you are more likely to be connected to the very different person, then it's going to be disassociative network. And then finally, in the middle, this is just random. That's there somewhere in between. And then the performance measurement actually varied from one to another. So there are many different interesting discoveries coming out. So associative, disassociative, and then random. The first plot shows the average distance. Clearly, if you connect similar people together, there were more diverse ideas coming out from the group, which is very interesting. And this is the average distance coming from the story writing experiment I just mentioned earlier. There was no difference. So therefore, this diversity promotion was coming from the fact that the collaboration was a key, right? Meaning that people actually ran away, probably one side of the world, they explored one direction. And the another side of the world, the people went to a different direction through a collaborative process. That's our interpretation of this result. And this is very, very statistically inappropriate result because we were able to run only 4 sessions, so n equals 4, keeping that in mind, right? So each curve represents 1 session results because they are coupled. So associative, disassociative, and the random, in all of those 4 sessions, 4 semesters, always the random conditions produce the best ideas evaluated by the third-party experts. And if you look at the old average utility of the old generated final designs, the disassociative networks produce always the best. It's very consistent, even though the sample size is 4, we always saw that kind of the results. And then the different results indicate different implications. We try to make sense, what is this? And this is where the artificial life comes in. Our way of synthesizing these results is that ideas are probably the evolving organisms. So in this case, in this view, each idea generated by each participant is the organism that try to replicate themselves in the social network environment, in which humans are no longer agents, but they are the environment, right? if you think about it this way, it's very natural. The fully connected network is just a well-connected gene pool, so that all the mixture is going to happen very quickly. They lose the genetic diversity. That's why it's not so optimal in terms of the quality. And also the final condition, this one is an easy landscape for you as an idea, as a replicator. You just need to satisfy maybe one computer scientist, he is sitting next to another computer scientist for the ideas. It's much easier to spread, right? Because the local landscape is consistent from place to place. Compared to that, the last environment is very harsh to the self-replicator. First, you satisfy computer scientists, and you move on to someone else's brain, and then now you need to satisfy artists, mathematicians, humanity, students, etc. It's going to be very, very tough environment. So in that case, the ideas need to evolve very conservative, so that it will not make any silly mistakes to survive. So this way, we can understand many different pieces together. Indeed, ideas may be understood as an actual artificial life evolving in your organization. This evolutionary view has been something we have been promoting for the last 10 years or so, and then this is one of the first experimental evidence, indirect evidence that it may be the case. And this study also illustrated many different facets of diversity, even though word diversity is everywhere. It may mean demographic diversity, but it may mean more functional diversity, diversity of network topologies, diversity with the product generated by the collaborative environment. They actually play different roles and different implications. We got to be very careful what we are talking about. Okay. With that, I'm going to thank our collaborators, funding agencies. Happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
So Hiroki, you finished a minute early, so we do have time for immediate questions if anyone has one.
Yes.
Thank you. It is a very, very interesting talk,
Thank you.
especially in terms of pushing the boundary of greater and greater ideas. I'm curious, did you consider the concept of psychological safety in the groups? And did you experiment with maybe setting it up, not setting it up, things like that as a factor?
Yeah, so in this particular experiment, we did not really control any psychological factors, primarily because it's entirely the online experiment, and then they are not really working face-to-face, and it's entirely anonymized. In some other social experiment we did for other project, we did change the initial prompt, that was pre-COVID, so it was entirely in person. So how the moderator is going to set up the culture and the rules, etc. So we did change some kind of environmental script, being creative, the creativity, new ideas are always welcomed, blah, blah, blah. That's one example to ensure the psychological safety versus we got to be very critical, right? We are not allowed to make any mistakes, etc. That's very critical conditions. And we found that in that particular experiment, not related to this talk, the random one, meaning that we don't say anything, that was the best. Interesting, right? Yeah.
Awesome. If anyone else has any more questions, we'll have to save it for the panel, and we have to move on to the next speaker now. So once again, thank you, Hiroki.
Thank you very much.
For the next talk, we have not Matt Scott. We have Jeremy Pitt giving a talk on user experience of conflict with Alife in cooperative survival scenario.
Oh, did I disconnect from the Zoom thing somehow?
Yeah. If anyone does have questions as well, feel free to drop them in the Slido, and I can read them later to the speakers. But you're more than welcome to voice them yourself as well.
I can see my email now. Sorry, must have disconnected. I have a question. Yeah,
yes.
This was funded by the US NSF, right? Yeah.
Many years ago, yes.
Yeah, that's right. Do you reckon you could get a project on diversity funded now? Do you?
No, we have actually another pending funding for $2 million that's entirely about diversity. That's here.
Really? Yeah.
It went to the final stage, and they could get rejected, but they encourage us to resubmit. Next year, we resubmitted Trump became president, rejected. Yeah. Beautiful.
That wasn't as funny then as I. Sorry about that.
You got to laugh it off.
Sorry about this, everyone. We'll get there. We'll get there. Is it saying I can view this full screen? Do this again. Yeah, you look right. I'll have to go through this rigmarole. Look, I know what to do now, though. So this is all good. Oh, okay. Right, finally, and with this, last one, thank you for coming back for this. So I'm going to talk about the user experience of Alife, and this is work that was led by Stanley, but also Matthew. So the question here is, we all know how much agentic AI is being hyped, and we all know these are autonomous systems of multiple components which are supposed to be performing these complicated tasks without some kind of human intervention. So, but our concern here is at what point will agentic AI converge or possibly collide with socio-technical systems? So now we have systems which are going to be combining some form of human intelligence, which we're going to refer to as Enlife, with some form of computational intelligence, which we're going to refer to as Alife. And we can also now imagine situations, where the Alife is actually in some kind of administrative or supervisory role over the Enlife. And we're going to also assert that conflict is inevitable. And this is the absolute foundation of game theory. It's the analysis of social decision-making and action in the presence of competition of some kind. And you can see that in the prisoner's dilemma, in the hawk-dove game. The essence of these things is conflict. Ada put up Ostrom's 8 principles of design principles for successful and sustainable common pool resource management in those institutions. And 3 of those are actually about conflict and conflict avoidance. So the need for monitoring, so we've got to make sure whether people are complying with the rules. The graduated sanctions, in case they do not, but also the appeals procedures, in case they think that it was unjustly applied. And of course, in our lives, we know all about all the different sort of mechanisms for alternative dispute resolution, from negotiation between parties through to litigation where you actually invoke the law. So we're trying to ask the question, what happens now when the Enlife is in conflict with the Alife? And here we have our socio-technical imaginary. And socio-technical imaginary is it's a thing, it's a research thing, but I think it's just a nice posh way of saying I made it up, right? But you can imagine the problem in data centers that autonomic computing was proposed is that you have the scheduler, and its priority is to minimize response time. So it wants to turn as many processes on as possible. On the other hand, you have the energy manager, and its priority is to minimize resource usage. And so it wants to turn as many processes off as possible. And obviously, turning all the processes on and turning all the processes off is a potential source of conflict. So we can imagine situations with these smart co-working spaces where we have the sensors and devices which are regulating the lighting and the temperature, and there's an Alife resource manager that wants to turn everything off. But all the humans in the thing, want a nice ambient office environment to work in, to maximize their productivity. And so the human productivity manager wants to turn things on to make sure that we've got this nice environment to work in. And so in a sense, we can imagine some kind of conflict between these, the artificial and the human. So we're going to do this, and I apologize. This is the only slide reuse. So for people who are in ABM Hub earlier, this is the context that we're going to look at this in. This is this self-organizing multi-agent scenario based on what we call the mega bike. Yeah. So I assume you've all seen these party bikes, yeah, where everybody jumps on, and you can all pedal, and you can all steer, and you can all brake. And in the middle here, there's a bunch of drinks which you can basically use to, yeah. So we've got a multi-agent version of that where you get 8 agents which occupy one of these bikes. They've got to agree on how to pedal this around a 2D grid world. And what they're searching for are these loot boxes, and they're looking for loot boxes of a particular color because that enables them to replenish their energy. And what's the main thing about this scenario is that we've got multiple interacting games going on. Yeah? And so the first game is the reenactment of Josh Ober's thought experiment Demopolis, where you've got to agree to get together on a bike. You've then got to agree the rules that you're going to use for pedaling around here, what direction you're going to go in, how fast you're going to go there, and so on. Yeah? And then you've got to operationalize those rules with the enactment. Yeah? And the thing about, here's the joke, it's literally free riding, yeah? Because the best thing to do if you're the agent is to sit there and do nothing while all the other agents pedal frantically and get you your loot boxes. Yeah? But of course, if everybody does that, the bike's going nowhere and you're staying stationary. So this is a linear public goods game. You then actually, if you do manage to move around a bit and get a loot box, then you've got to decide who gets which part of the resources. Yeah? And then, you know, there's obviously all these problems of monitoring, sanctions, and punishment if you don't participate. Yeah? And there's also a collective risk dilemma because you can be eliminated from the game because you've got to avoid this existential threat by avoiding this thing called the Audi. Yes, and for those of you who've ever cycled around London, you know why it is that you want to avoid the Audi. It was the existential threat to you. Yeah. And the thing is, if the bike is caught by the Audi, yeah, then the agents on the bike play this balloon debate game, and they have to decide to eliminate one of their number, sacrifice it to the Audi. Yeah. And the riders on the bike have to decide that amongst themselves. Yeah. And essentially the question that we're asking here now is how does the Alife feel when the Alife vote goes against them? Yeah? In other words, there's one rider on the bike that's human, there's 7 which are artificial, and the artificial agents vote to eliminate our single rider. Yeah? So this is what happens. We have a single player playing the game with 7 artificial agents. The Alife gets to customize an avatar, is given a tutorial, and then gets to play the game. And our Alife has characteristics and characterization. So the characteristics affect the task performance. So this is how it steers and pedals. Yeah, and this is just simple AI planning. Yeah, but it also has this characterization, which is going to express how the Alife is going to interact with the Alife during a balloon debate game using particularly tailored prompts for an LLM. Yeah. And so you can see that, you know, this is why it's a kind of Alife, because it is embedded in this collective action situation where those actions have consequences. Yeah. And then you play the game, yeah, and of course, you know, we did it with students, so we didn't have to get ethics approval, but it's fixed, all right? You cannot win, yeah, because the megabike is always caught by the Audi. You're sort of like cycling around, and along comes the Audi, yeah. And then the balloon debate game is fixed as well, yeah. So the Alife is always going to be outvoted by a majority of the Alife, yeah. Because, as I said, we want to know how they feel. So hopefully, I mean, if I've got some time, I've got some time. Yeah. So we can watch a bit of the video here. So I wonder if the so this was Stanley. He implemented this all in Unity, yeah. And so he did all the music design and all this, yeah. And so you can see this is him. You know, when you start playing the game, and you choose your thing, you get the instructions. nice echo, yeah. This is playing the game, yeah, so you can see the force and the direction that the player can adjust with the arrows, yeah. And there you can see the loot boxes, the various colors. And sort of, actually, it's genuinely hilarious playing this game, actually. Especially when you get two people play. But one of these is Stanley, and the other 7 are the agents. Yeah. And if we move on a bit, there's a point where, yeah, there's the Audi. Yeah, there goes my chance of ever owning a car, basically. So you can see the Audis crashed into the car, and now they'll end up playing the game. So now you get to vote for the agent that you want to eliminate, but the agents are voted, and you see they've been prompted, and it's coming up with the reasons why you got voted off. And at some point, of course, so these are all these prompts generated by the LLM, yeah. So, and you lose. So Stanley's lost, yeah. And so he's getting voted off the bike. And sorry, let's go. Yeah. And so just to rub it in, game over. So that was the game. Yeah. Seamlessly, yeah. Back to the video. How do I turn the? Do I turn this off? It's off. It's off. All right. Okay. So we did this recruitment, and of course, this is in fact one of these weird studies, because basically it's Imperial College students. I've got 2 minutes to finish. Oh, that's fine. Yeah. Of course, it's actually Imperial College students, so in fact it's an even weirder study because it's, they fill in this pre-game questionnaire about their demographics and background, personality, all this sort of stuff. Then they play the game, and then we give them this game questionnaire about immersion engagement and all this kind of stuff that you can read here. And these nice pretty graphs that get produced, and the key thing about here is that actually most of the participants reported feeling very little control during the conflict. Yeah. Generally speaking, they were quite excited to play the game and not fearful about it. But the ones that actually had more negative pre-game attitudes towards AI, it reinforced this when they were booted off the bike. Yeah. And this thing about having very little control was so important, I thought I'd mention it twice. Yeah, but the experienced emotion here was quite interesting, because I know this is a tiny sample, and but you understand, yeah. So, I think by one, right? So, yeah. But they reported sadness and anger, and some even supported surprise. Yeah, so it's quite. It is suggesting that there is definite emotive effect that is being had during these episodes with people interacting in Alife. Yeah? And this being the case, this is clearly something that we would want to take into account when we're designing socio-technical systems where we have some level of agentic AI in there. And so just to conclude, so it's an interesting investigation, HCI. Obviously, there are some fairly substantial limitations, but we have the game, so we can start doing some things. And it is shedding some light on how Enlife experiences emotions when they're being rejected by Alife once you've started to anthropomorphize this. Yeah. We also noticed at least some sense of feeling of injustice, that there was a low extent of acceptance of the Alife rationale. Now, we don't know necessarily whether that was actually they knew what was going to happen in some sense, but if they didn't, then it's saying to us, well, okay, if you have got Alife that is in an administrative role, and it is trying to give explanations for it, it's quite possible that these humans are not going to accept these explanations. So all you want to do about explainability, even if you get the right explanation, it doesn't necessarily mean that the human's going to accept that explanation. And so basically this means that organizations need to adopt these transparent decision rationales and user override mechanisms in LLM-driven socio-technical systems, in our opinion. That's it. Thank you very much. Yeah.
So it's at this point I'd like to invite, there was an echo then, invite all our speakers back up. We're going to have a joint panel. We need to clone you somehow, but if Sarah is still there.
I see. I have to move between being Stanley and being, being Stefan.
I can do this for now. So I'll kick off with, I'll kick off with one of the questions that was left in Slido. So this one was directed towards Hiroki. Did you see the rise of certain groups or individuals guiding the overall outcome in the fully connected groups?
Can you say it again?
Did you see the rise of certain groups or individuals guiding the overall outcome in the fully connected groups?
Yeah, so they don't really know each other, and what they saw is the randomized username, which is very difficult to memorize. So I wouldn't say that there's any group of people who intentionally try to lead a discussion. So, but generally speaking, the activity levels are different from person to person. So the more vocal people tend to naturally guide the discussion. That's very natural to every situation, right? The speaking time is by far the most significant predictor for who's going to be a leader. In that case, it's the same. Yeah.
I'm not sure who this one is directed to, but I think it was for you as well, also Hiroki. So could you talk more about communicating your findings to other fields in social sciences?
Well, this is the collaboration with social scientists, so we don't have to communicate. We start from the beginning, so that was more like the communication at the very beginning of the ideation process of research itself. But in general, you need to spend a lot of time. And it's not just explaining. We need to learn their framework, and I'm sure there are many social scientists here. So we use different languages, but once you spend a lot of time, then you understand what each one of us actually means. Like a typical, the story I often tell is that the word model means different things. Yeah, like a vector means a different thing in the medical field as well. So those misconceptions need to be sorted out at the very beginning. So I think there's no quick and easy solution. You need to establish a very reliable, trustworthy relationship by spending a lot of time with them. Yeah, but once we are on the same page, communication is very easy, because we understand what we discovered. So yeah.
If I could ping-pong that to you, Jeremy, actually. So do you think this kind of this discussion and meaning making together would be a solution to your end life that do not want to get on with your AI at the start of the game? Do you think this kind of understanding the limitations perhaps of the AI, or like understanding the personality of the AI system that they're interacting with, do you think this is a way forward for that?
I would certainly imagine that education and experience in terms of getting to know what the strengths and weaknesses of any partnership are quite important in achieving your overall aims and ambitions. Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
I have a question for Hiroki.
Oh.
So may I? Or
Yeah, sure.
So my question here is the spatially connected and the fully connected are two sorts of like extremes of the graphs. So did you try any random graphs, Erdos, Renyi, small UR type graphs? Is that?
That was certainly in our thinking process, but running experiment is costly, so we have to choose one extreme and another to cover the, as much spectrum as possible without, having much of the funding. And if we got a couple $1 million, we would be happy to sweep those details, but no, unfortunately not. Yeah.
Because I thought it was really intriguing when you had the dissociative and the associative networks, and whether, in your in the small world network, for example, whether it was the associative ones who were right at the core, whether it was dissociated ones, if you see what I mean. Yeah, and this could really sort of make right, yeah.
So I had the same question with the network topologies. But that would be at the same time, everybody at the same time with a different topology. But how about over time? So if you have teams of fully connected, but then you make them swap. So how is diversity preserved when people are actually moving? Is there any study of that?
Not that I know of. But once you understand the idea generation is an evolutionary process, like many of us already know how evolution works. You can already know the answer, right? Like depending on what you want to achieve, you want to promote diversity first, and you want to converge later. In that case, it's a terrible idea to start your project by having a brainstorming. It's a very typical. Let's have a meeting, with a lunch, and then get together, 10 people talking to each other, face to face, fully connected. That's the worst. Yeah. So we should, if we are to change the network topology, we should start from very sparse, maybe individual, process, and then gradually connect the people together. And then we don't really have to run the experiment. It's obvious if you consider ideas are evolving entities. I hope that makes sense, right?
Yes. Thank you.
Just continuing that thought a little bit with the idea of the evolution of ideas, right? Things evolve according to the evolutionary pressures that are put on them. And so I wonder how much of the changing of network topologies, for example, is changing either which evolutionary pressures are being put on or the strength thereof, right? I mean, in your case, as they asked, psychological safety wasn't as much of a factor, but if it was, one topology would have much more social peer pressure than others. What sounds good and works well within your local team is good, but things that that maybe management wouldn't be so happy with, you suppress.
I'm sure that's the case.
So, right.
So it all depends.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering how much we can map out which pressures get changed with the topology changes. Anyway.
Probably you
anyway.
Think about it already. It's kind of, this has nothing to do with my research. It's more like a, way of thinking, like Charles Darwin proposed evolutionary theory. It's not about making prediction directly, but once you understand something is evolving, you can start extrapolating from that core idea, right? So how you want to organize your organization, with that mind, then that is a very much applicable thing. And like collaboration with AI, if behavior itself is the evolving entity, not just the players. We can take certain strategies in that perspective. It's more like how to see the organization. Right? So I don't think we need to spend $1 million to run the experiment.
One question here, Tom.
I have a crazy question in regards to both of the talks and also from a topology perspective. I'm kind of curious also in how to actually create the greatest ideas. And AI, or as you would call it, the AI life form at the moment, has the ability for you to specify its backgrounds, its interests, its focus, its specialist areas, and then you could have multiple of them working with the human. Maybe the human doesn't even know that they're actually AIs, but it would give you an ability to scale up experiments and kind of see what does great look like when the AI life is actually empowering the N life to get to better ideas.
What does great look like?
Instead of just having a very miserable N life who's being like killed by the AI life and the Audi, what would it look like if actually the AI life was like, hey dude, I'm gonna like break these rules here and I'm gonna save you from the Audi? So like what kind of interactions or organization design does it look like the diversity between MLabs and AIs, etc., to actually get to a point where they're creating better ideas than they did individually?
Okay, so I think there's two parts to the question. So obviously I was named after the miserable prophet in the Bible, so I just see gloom everywhere. Right? So it's a really interesting idea to see actually what would happen if instead of fixing it the way we did, we fixed it so that there was an element of deus ex machina out of it, and one of the agents was consistently voted, the deciding vote, for example, to keep the human on the bike, and what kind of bonding and anthropomorphization that would create. I mean, that's a super idea, and if you want to get hold of the software, you can run that, because it's all open source. So, but that's a really, really interesting idea that instead of having a conflict, it's the artificial savior that I think you're talking about here, which is. Yeah.
I love the Apple TV show. I think it's called like Foundations or something like that. And at least so far as I've been observing it, the AI is trying desperately to keep the humans alive.
Right, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. And then I think that there was another part to your question too, which was about how do you know that you've got...
So just as humans have different backgrounds, you could actually program diversity into the AI agents, different goals, different kinds of personalities and things like that. And then you can experiment with them to interact with each other and see like what kind of effectively team shape makes for the most successful creators.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point again. So we were quite limited in the prompts that we were using in this particular case, at least in the megabyte game. But in both that and in the open-ended institutional adaptation, the type of the LLM would be quite interesting too. And then I suppose you're quite right that it doesn't have to just be one. We could have a whole range that you are. So I will suggest that one to Samina as well and see how she feels about that. So thank you. So that's two research ideas. That's next year sorted out. Thank you.
I think both of these are targeted towards Jeremy. We have two online. So this is, are there undermeasured aspects of AI collabs that could lead to human skepticism beyond the usual ironies of automation, responsibility, duty, etc.?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, of course. Are there undermeasured aspects of AI collaborations that could lead to human skepticism beyond the usual ironies of automation, things like responsibility, duty, etc.?
I think yes.
Okay, to build on that then, how would you, what would you need to change in your system, because it's an open source system, to incorporate those?
Okay. Yeah. I think the solution really depends on the culture, right? So like, it's not really specific to AI, like how we build trust among ourselves. And this actually greatly varies from culture to culture. We are here in Japan, right? Saying sumimasen, arigato, that those kind of really social grooming is very important here. And then there's even one of my collaborators, they experimented what happens if AI says sorry. And then suddenly the people's perception about AI actually jumps up, like in your environment experiment. What if the agent in Alife say sorry, but we have to kick you out? Then maybe the participant may have the less negative feeling, that would definitely in the case in Japan, but maybe not in the UK. But I think the solution to that kind of thing will be very much localized based on the culture. That's my view.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think I get the question now. So we don't, Well, there is this word social capital, but the idea that you can build up socially constructed conceptual resources by virtue of the interactions that you have and the benefits that you get from those you then use in subsequent interactions. I think this is this what is...
This is, yeah, you're supplying another reason why you might collaborate.
Right,
yeah.
Yes. But then, but I think it works. I couldn't find it now. There's a great cartoon about, I think Dave, you were saying, you always say thank you to Alexa when it plays your music. Yeah. Spare this one, he said, thank you. Yeah. And there are very good reasons why we go through these rituals. So if I might generalize, both Japan and the United Kingdom share something in common, which is that we occupy crowded islands which are a bit wet. Yeah? So we're all obsessed with the weather. Yeah? And then we go through these rituals of saying sorry. And the reason we do that is to suppress the anger in the UK. Because if we didn't suppress the anger, we'd be stabbing each other all the time. But it's really important that actually, when Zara was talking about the semiotics, there's a reason for having these things, because it creates much stronger social bonds between, and if we want to have human AI or human Alife collaboration, these kinds of semiotics and these kinds of rituals and these kinds of exchanges are probably really, really important to introduce some element of friction into the interaction, which is essential to make it actually work properly.
We've still got a few on Slido, so this is a clarification for Jeremy. What exact planner and state action model do you mean by basic AI planning algorithm, and how does it couple to the LLM prompts?
Just big if-then-else thing.
Okay.
I mean, the thing is that there are a number of parameters that you could define in terms of how eager they were to cooperate. And so I didn't show that interface, but Stanley basically had these sliders that you could move around, and so...
Sorry, your gesture is being picked up by a Zoom. Yeah.
Very good, yes. On the prompt. And then basically, this was giving you certain probabilities, and these probabilities would affect whether you were more likely to comply or not, how hard you were likely to pedal, and so on. It's just...
Yeah. So in your experiment, does the player know that which agents are Alife, or do you also have the multiple human players collaborate together?
It's getting your own back. So in our case, the player knew that all other 7 were artificial.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But the thing is, yes. If we had more time and we had more volunteers, But you're absolutely right. What we'd really want to do is play this on a longitudinal thing, where the individual players don't know whether they are playing with humans here. And then we get into the voluntary association thing that I was talking about in another workshop. Who do you want to collaborate with? And it would be really, really interesting if the humans started to teaming up with each other. So it's a really that's 3 papers I've got for next year.
We do have more questions, but we're out of time. So what I'm going to suggest is, what I will do is I will post the remaining questions in the Discord, the Alife Discord, workshop channel. And should you wish to, continue the discussion there, that's where they'll be. Yeah, thanks again to our panelists.
Yeah, thank you.
And now I'm going to give the talk. So I'm going to pass on session chairing over to Jeremy.
So while this is setting up, this is quite, so Hiroki, should we have started the session by just getting people together in pairs to introduce themselves to each other, rather than doing what we did, which was to get everybody to introduce? Right. So if anybody runs a workshop next time, yeah, start off with pairs. Yeah. So.
I hope this will disappear at the top, but there we go. Awesome. Yeah, so a bit of a different talk today. So I've already introduced myself, but I'm Nathan Lloyd from Ontario Tech University. My co-authors on this paper is Maria Peixoto and Peter Lewis, all from Ontario Tech University in the Trustworthy AI Lab. This paper started as I think any paper written by me does, as a rant. You'll see the semblance of a rant underneath this presentation. And this is from one-to-one to many-to-many, bring a complex systems perspective to organizational AI adoption. Right, so the kind of space that we're all operating in at the moment is, you go anywhere, you see agentic AI. You go on LinkedIn, everyone's an AI expert, they're trying to sell you products, so on and so forth, right? We have organizations that, sell services around AI, forecasting, insane amount of money and reasons to get into the space. We have organizations like Google who are now telling us that the productivity that they're getting inside of the lab is now moving outside into the environment, into business. People think that, that AI is going to continue to progress and become more ingrained in the technologies that they use every day. And there's some studies here that say, that essentially Gen AI has been adopted more rapidly than the personal computer or the internet relative to their release. So, kind of in the theme of our call, which was about societal transitions, our societal transition here is that modern organizations are under growing pressure to adopt and leverage AI. But what this actually translates to is, we end up in positions where leaders of organizations, force these technologies into their systems without really thinking it through. They don't understand it. These individuals are buying into hype. Perhaps they, are scared that the AI train will pass them by. And they maybe lack the technical expertise to kind of judge what AI or what technologies they should be using or developing or adopting. But I think there's also in here as well inherently the inability to sift fact from fiction regarding AI. And this has become increasingly difficult. Fake news, the erosion of our institutions, just more and more people, as I've just mentioned, trying to sell you these products from the get-go. So I'm going to pause here really quickly. I'm going to throw a grenade. I've talked about AI adoption, but what the hell is AI? So I'm going to try and crowdsource. I'm going to pick on some people. What is AI?
From my background, it covers a lot of things. So machine learning, there's tons of algorithms, game search, game theory, all of that stuff to me is AI, to include up to the large language models we have today.
Thank you. Thank you. Hiroki, what is AI?
Yeah, anything that is not coming from our brain. So the traditional computer, the computer programs are already AI, in my opinion. That's how Alan Turing defined it.
I'm going to defer to someone else, not in this room, or unfortunately on this planet. Maggie Bowden said that, it's kind of AI is making computers do, or any artifact, I guess, do the kind of things minds do.
Does anyone else? Yes.
Artificial problem solving?
Is that the problems themselves are artificial, or?
Problem solving.
In an artificial way?
Done by an artificial way.
Okay.
It's artificial intelligence. So intelligence would be problem solving, and an artificial is like,
Yeah. Anyone else want a 2 cents?
Whatever you want it to be.
This is where I'll go. Okay, so this, if I'm giving a public talk anywhere and I'm trying to introduce someone to AI for the first time, these are probably the definitions that I'm going to give to Stavros gave one right here. AI is to make computers do the sorts of things that minds can do. Where we have definitions up here about automation, and then we have definitions down here that, like actual, literal, conscious machines, right? But I think there's a lot of us kind of fed up with the term artificial intelligence. James Borg at the Cultural Evolution on Planet X workshop this earlier this week. AI doesn't actually mean anything because it's hard to get a concrete definition of it. The term AI itself is not particularly helpful categorization. It's misleading, it's obscuring. And even intelligence, itself is a suitcase word. All right, so we have this very complex definition, and rightly so, we can think about it in a technological lens, as most of us researchers do, but it means a lot of different things. And so this, AI really is a speech act, right? We have this, technological sense of the word, but it's, we often have this, monolithic label, and we then ascribe these overblown capabilities to it. And I think this is a real big issue in the space at the moment, because now we have articles that look like this, right? The government wants AI to fight your wars and review your taxes. AI is really doing a lot of heavy lifting in this sentence, as is government, really, right? Government is a type of organization, but it's not this one single entity, despite how much we would like it to be that way for our own understanding. So, given the complexities of AI and organizations, we think there needs to be a shift from this monolithic, from the one-to-one to the many-to-many. And so again, we can think about this on the technological AI side, so we can ground this in tools, methods, approaches. And I think this is one kind of pillar of AI. But there's also the conceptual AI, right? So there's the public discourse and the imaginary, like what are people thinking about it? What are people saying about it? We've got our arts and literature that perhaps even inform some of the technologies that we create. We have communications and marketing. We have all the tech bros on LinkedIn telling us what to buy, what to invest in. We have our culture, the way we can perhaps make jokes or meme about some of the communication and the marketing, for example. Quite more seriously, we have the impact of AI and just more broadly technology on labor, on the role of democracy in our society, and how it changes the power relations between individuals, technologies, individuals, other organizations, and so on. Right? And so we have these two pillars, but these two pillars don't not speak to one another, they interact. And we can see this just within our own research space, because we have domains like ethical, responsible, trustworthy, explainable, human-centered AI, among others, right? We're constantly trying to fit these two pieces together. So I will admit, I just wanted to put this image on this slide. So the conceptual and the technological really do just touch. We have essentially people making these big claims about what AI can do. And again, AI doesn't really mean anything in this sense. But we can really kind of argue with that and fight back against that to ground AI in the context of which we are using it. So the kind of call to this extended abstract that we put in is, can we avoid this? CEOs want their companies to adopt AI, but they do not get it. And can we do this by, instead of having these two big blobs and using complex systems perspectives, to consider the interplay between the technological and the conceptual factors of AI, and then apply that to different types of organizations. And then from this, can we see, under which conditions, identify the conditions, under which alignment, resilience, and responsible adoption of AI occur, and then can we design for this from the get-go? And that's really it. It's just, wanted to get that idea out and get some feedback. Thanks. Any questions? Session chat.
Very quick one. Thank you very much. I think it's just one clarifying thing. You mentioned AI not being defined as if it were an issue. And I would argue, as always, that most of our words are like that. Yeah. So why is that a problem?
I think I see it as a problem because when I talk to people that aren't in the space, they become enamored with the term and then ascribe, AI affords a lot of different things to people that aren't in the space. And I think that's very problematic because it's becoming a huge part of people's lives. And so I think, I'm not saying that we need more concrete definitions or even more definitions. I'm just saying we need new ways to think about how artificial intelligence integrates and interacts with parts of organizations.
Because we always do that with words, right? Like we do witch hunts, right? You're a witch. Or we do, I don't know, all sorts of things. We always abuse them the same way. Is there a solution to that from the past? Or is this new?
I'm not sure.
I think I didn't understand how you would bring the complex system perspective into AI, organizational AI adoption.
Yeah, so when I first put this together, I was thinking about conceptual modeling and mind mapping, really, thinking about how all of these components fit together. I think there's I mean, we use a lot of tools in this space. I think there's probably space for agent-based modeling to be used here. But yeah, again, extended abstract, happy for the feedback. Do you have any ideas how we could use this? In terms of the definition, is it working? I can hear you well enough. But...
I guess for the people online. But yeah, there's a definition from Sam Altman where he gives an economic definition of AI. Are you familiar with it?
I'm not, no.
It's like, it's, you know, when AI is good enough to just replace a certain percentage of labor, basically. So in a way, it's quite solid compared to the other ones, right? Although it's also very loaded into the definition. There's obvious consequences, right? But I think that it's an interesting way in terms of measuring AI's impact on society. It's very slanted in terms of like we're not going to use AI to augment, we're going to use it to replace, right? It's going to be a collaborative thing. It's going to make labor very cheap. But do you think something in terms of like even though I don't like the definition in general, I like the flavor of it being like, this is in terms of social impact, this is when we'll have something powerful enough. So maybe that could be, that would be a suggestion, maybe.
So the suggestion is to use that definition? Or?
No. It's to come up with a definition maybe that's also like socially, like it's based on social impact, like that one is. Loaded into the other one is like everyone's jobs being replaced, but maybe there's another social impact we can measure with AI if we go down a different path and not that one. Right?
Do you think we still run into the same issue there, though, if we still use the same top-level AI? Because there's so many more technologies that I'm sure are in the pipeline down the future, right? Like there'll be whatever's after Gen AI and large language models that will still be part of AI. So it's like, are we just kicking the can down the road, as I would say?
Yeah, maybe you don't even have to call it. It could be just the technology things, like how much will this technology destabilize or change society, right? Doesn't have to be AI. Yeah. But maybe AI, we should just consider AI as another technology. Anyway, spoken enough.
Building on that theme of just thinking of AI as a new type of technology, a new thing coming out, a new calculator, all that kind of jazz, and humans not being brilliant at coming up in advance with great systems and being a little bit more reactive than proactive. If you're looking at history, so things like when it's not best examples, but basically when people maybe in the military went from arrows to guns, or when people went from horses, and I feel really bad for all the horse riders of the past, to cars for the first time, and different kinds of cars, and eventually the racing car driver comes out. Are there examples you see of technology adoption in which this was done well? That should be maybe promoted more as a great template for how AI could be experimented with that way?
That's a very good question, and I don't have a good answer for that. And so that's one thing I'm going to do as soon as I get back. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to bring up somewhat the tangential issue of the artificial intelligence as a name. I don't know how many people know that was actually coined as the alternative name for cybernetics. Probably you know that, right? Cybernetics used to be the thing that the cyber. That was like back in the 60s and 70s, that was a household term, like what we are using as AI. And as you know, the Norbert Wiener was a jerk, and then there are people who don't like him, so they coined artificial intelligence. That became basically the standard nomenclature. So I think that most of the stuff of the meaning and the adoptions of those the names are kind of very social marketing kind of thing. And then as long as we are looking at actual core concept, I don't think that's much of the issue. Yeah.
Do you think that still applies to the general public, though, who, because we look into it,
Yeah.
but they just see the surface level of AI?
Yeah, including those public adoptions. I mean, like cybernetics, nobody actually understood, but everybody was having the Norbert Wiener cybernetics books in the living room. That was back in the 70s, right? Yeah.
Me. We've still got time for another quick question, or?
No, I think that's time.
We don't.
I'm session chairing myself. We are over time.
Excuse me. Before that, could you say something about how you would imagine the misconceptions and misperceptions of AI and the willful use of deception interfering in your many-to-many relation?
Could you rephrase that, sorry?
Some people deliberately use the misconception of AI in order to leverage a asymmetric power relationship. Some cases where there is deception used in order to. There is some cases where you could quite clearly see that an AI system is not really doing anything that we might remotely consider as being AI,
intelligent, yeah.
But you put the AI stamp on it in order to, cause fear or for the sake of appearing to be consistent with this requirement for everybody to be using AI. So you just so all of these misperceptions, deliberate misdirections, how are they likely to interfere in this many-to-many relationship that you're talking about?
Something I've not thought about.
Fortunately, your supervisor has.
Thanks for the service.
Well, I have now, because you just asked the question. A very ill-formed thought in response to that, but it does occur to me that perhaps the many-to-many approach is actually more robust to that, because there's more diversity in the relationships that you're actually looking at and the different actors. I think in the experience I've had of looking at AI adoption by organizations, you often get this very, as you described it, like monolithic narrative. Like, I don't know, Northrop Grumman, to pick on Dave over there, has adopted AI. Like, what does that actually mean, right? But it might be that your guys on the board are smart enough to know that if they say that, their share price goes up. So you can use it quite tactfully in that, not tactfully, like tactically in that kind of way. And then all they need to do is have a little bit of internal evidence. Well, we did a bit of an internal survey, and like a whole bunch of people said that they'd used some AI in what they do, right? And then you're kind of not even asking what that is, because you're not looking at it at that level of granularity, which is what Nathan's proposing to do. So I think that actually it puts that more complex network to the fore, where you're starting to analyze it at that level. So then you potentially got things like people paying attention there. You've got more opportunity for robustness. You're still going to get some of those things happening in that many-to-many, of course. But maybe it's not quite as susceptible just to this kind of very simplistic thinking.
Yeah, I was thinking that the whole time.
All right, good. Write it down then.
Okay, in that case, as a session chair, can we thank Nathan again for a very interesting talk? Okay, so we had an idea to try to increase bonds between people, some social capital, and so we wanted to split people up into some working groups to try and explore some ideas. Okay, so the question that we came up with is partly based really on what Nathan's been talking about, but also rather inspired by Ada's rather fabulous talk. Yeah. And while I was going, so it leaves just as the put the work of fear of. Okay, so maybe we won't do any working groups. We might just have to do it. Yeah. But the thing that interested me here was I was reminded of this principle or dictum or whatever it is from managerial cybernetics, which I think where we came in. So Stafford Beer was one of the pioneers in organizational cybernetics, and he had this thing. If you want to understand what's going on, you've got to apply this principle he called POSIWID. Yeah? So the purpose of a system is what it does. Yeah? So irrespective of what the designers actually intended it to do, irrespective of what the users are trying to make of it, yeah, the crucial thing is what it actually does. Yeah? And some of these things, in particular these days, are having some kind of quite consequential side effects in the way that we work, the way that we think, the way that we interact, and so on. Yeah? So if we are doing what Nathan is suggesting, and we're unpicking these two blobs that we're just trying to smash together, so you're unpicking it, and now we've got this variety of sort of like Alife types, and we've got this variety of organizational types. Yeah? And the question is, does the Alife have a purpose? Yeah? So does it have its own purpose, or has it got a purpose which has been given by proxy by OpenAI or whatever? Yeah? The organization has a purpose, and of course, it might be that the purpose of the I mean, Imperial College has a mission statement, yeah, and that mission is to do world-leading research and teaching. Yeah. Being recorded. What it actually does is it manages a huge property portfolio. That's right. That's right. And in fact, its real name should be Imperial Coal Hedge Fund, because it is just a big hedge fund with a nice university attached to it. Yeah, and that's just the side effect. The real thing is to manage this property portfolio so that about 20 people in the organisation to continue to pay themselves six-figure salaries. Yeah, far more. Well, that's me out of the job, right? Was this recorded? Yeah. So the organisation purpose, and of course, as I said, is this purpose, what it's actually doing compared to what it says that it wants to do. Yeah. So I thought the alignment talk by the guy from Softmax, whose name I completely forget, was really quite interesting in his point of view, because he talked about these 5 different levels of alignment, or 7 rather. So he was talking about physical alignment, social alignment, goal alignment, group alignment, cultural alignment, organic alignment. And so what we were thinking to try to do was to divide up into working groups and try to think, what is the problem here when we're doing our many-to-many and we're trying to align goals or do different types of alignment when the purpose may be different from the thing, and you're trying to push these things together. And what we know, for example, is that when something hits, you can either get no reaction and you carry on doing things as you claim to be doing. You can either get realignment, in which case you adjust what you are doing to meet the new situation, or you get misalignment, where you get a divergence of events. Oh, well, thank you very much for that contribution to our fascinating discussion.
That's some awkward planning. Okay, before everyone leaves.